Hey guys, so I was tired of thinking how to make a build around just don't get hit by building either around block or dodge, and I wanted to experiment with something else, and I wanted to experiment with mitigating the damage. And I'm actually very surprised and pretty happy with the results, but I'm gonna talk about the defensive layer first because the build itself did not have sufficient damage for the very end game. I don't know how you would classify, but the build I would say performed well until tier 12 maps, but with all sorts of crazy mods. But after that I started doing tier 15, 16s with like minus max res, monsters crit, vulnerability, and it became a bit too squishy. So how I'm mitigating the damage, how I'm getting the damage. I actually started as a crit bleed slayer, but that was in the previous video, but I dropped that and using Bladestorm, no longer crit, but it is still bleed slayer. So slayer, why slayer? Because slayer has, I have a list of all the mitigations. So I have as a slayer 10% reduced damage while leeching. Then from the timeless jewel I am getting up to 11% less damage while leeching, and that's not just from hits, it should also work with degen. Then I have fortify support gem, which grants 10% less damage from hits. Then I got 6 endurance charges, which grant 24% reduced damage, which would also work for dots. And then I got 2.6 duration immortal call, which does give all sorts of mitigation, mostly for physical. And then I got, if there are 5 nearby bleeding enemies, I get up to 2000 life regen per second. However, I only have 5000 unreserved life, which isn't that amazing, but like I said, it felt fine only when you're doing like crazy mods, like double damage with vulnerability, crit and stuff like that. Then you start noticing, well, that you are too squishy. But I feel like most builds would notice that we are too squishy. Maybe Max Block Gladiator would not really notice that, we don't really care. But like I said, I was bored of building just don't get hit builds, and I wanted to experiment with that, and I think in the future I'm gonna try to make more builds that just mitigate the damage. Now this build kind of relies on Jack the Axe. Jack the Axe, I think it was buffed last league. It does grant you an aura which reserves 10% of your life, which does give you more bleed damage and gives you regen per bleeding enemy nearby. 400 flat life regen per bleeding enemy up to 5 enemies. It also gives decent amount of damage over time multiplier, but the axe is not too amazing. Like if you could quality it to 28 and then corrupt it or even double corrupt with flat feast damage and then percentage feast damage, it would boost your damage, but it would still not be that great. In the end I had 460,000 bleed DPS against Cirrus. The strength of this build is not really in single target. The strength lies in surviving multiple enemies, I guess, because of the mitigation that I mentioned before and massive regen. Essentially this build, it's not the fastest, it's not the highest DPS, it's not the best tank, but it does get the job done. So if you're tired of playing just don't get hit builds and you don't mind slower pace and you just want a kind of cheapish, it's not too cheap but it's also nothing too expensive, I would say pretty cheap, maybe within 5 exalts including body armor. Actually I'm not sure how much it costs. The base body armor, Redeemer's body armor 6 linked, item level 100, you can buy it for like 60-70 years, and then you just craft frenzy on hit until, well, you get it, and then, well, then you have it. Depends how lucky you get. Our items are pretty cheap. Like you could improve this build quite a bit more, but I'm only playing one build for like a week at most. But if you were to play this build for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you could squeeze out a lot more damage, and unfortunately the best damage would be Owl Surprising for Pride Aura, which would actually, how much would it give me? I'm gonna quickly check out Pride Aura and see how much it would give. So Pride initial max effect, yeah, with Pride Aura I would gain around 200k bleed DPS. So if you could squeeze in Pride Aura without sacrificing other auras, you would just have enough damage. But the bad part is that amulet is like 80 exalts. Depends on the mood of the market, I guess. It could be like 20x, it could be 50x, it could be 100x. You could still squeeze in Pride Aura with a couple other changes, but I did not want to invest more into this build. And you could also add Corrupting Fever, but you you would need to use Corrupting Fever itself to refresh it, because I'm not using our skills that consume life, well, other than Leap Slam, that would allow me to refresh Corrupting Fever. And you would lose like 2000 life each time you activate it, and it lasts for like, what, 6 seconds? So, and you would have to stack 10 stacks for Corrupting Fever, and even then, on a falling, it would give me around 70k additional dot DPS, so it's not too amazing. And I think this build lacks around 100k DPS to feel pretty pleasant, and around 500 life to feel like absolutely tanky even in tier 16 maps. The build may look like it has bad damage because you're only gonna see like a fast bleed tick, and that seems very weak, but then once 8 bleed stacks start stacking, the clear speed damage and single target isn't that bad because the bleed is very consistent, especially because you're tanky. You can just face tank most enemies and like continuously do consistent bleed damage, so it's not too bad. And for extra tankiness, you could actually add more block with just 2 points. I could take glancing blows, but I don't have any spell block, so but it would add some tankiness, especially if you could also get a shield with recovery life on block, which I do not have. Also, because I am losing recovery from leech, so the way I'm recovering life is mostly through the Enduring Cry, which does give massive regen, and also just life flask, and also obviously from the jacked axe, which does get up to 2000 life regen. So the loss of regen from leech isn't even that bad. But however, one bad thing is that since I am playing a bleed build, I don't really hit very hard, so my leech per hit is actually pretty bad. So it takes a bit of time to reach my leech cap rate, and that's when I get the mitigation. Also, like, that's one of the reasons why Sirius is pretty bad. If you die, you come back, you have no endurance charges, you are also not leeching, so if Sirius hits you before you can start leeching and ramping up endurance charges, you are absolutely squishy. You have like almost no mitigation. This is another like weakness of this build. So I'm gonna talk about my items real fast. One thing to mention early on, in Path of Building, Cruelty Support Gem is not calculating the bleed damage. So I added a 7th link, Swift Affliction, which adds like another 40% more multiplier. So when you look at PUB and see 7 link, don't be too confused, because Swift Affliction is just to simulate the bleed damage. Alright, so now the items. Jacked Axe, I bought this corrupted. I wanted a bit more AoE, so that's with the AoE. But if you can get Jacked Axe 28 quality with the flat fees damage corruption, that would be perfect. It wouldn't add an amazing amount of damage, but it would be noticeable. Then I am using the new helmet and scaling frenzy charges because this is Slayer. The maximum frenzy charge is also going to be equal to the maximum endurance charge is going to be equal to maximum frenzy charge. So you just take maximum frenzy charges and you also increase maximum endurance charges. Since I'm not crit anymore, you still need a way of generating frenzy charges against single target, and Blood Rage is not going to be much help against single target. So for that reason, you're going to need to get frenzy on hit by the armor. There is a unique ring called Precursor's Ring, which can roll frenzy on hit, but it's very difficult to get it and it's very expensive. By the way, the helmet, I also had to modify it in Path of Building, because the helmet, if it has a red line, it means it's not calculated. The faster bleed per frenzy charges is not calculated in Path of Building, so I simulated that with the 6 frenzy charges, which is 24 faster. Same goes for the axe. I had to modify it because it did not recognize in PUB. Next, shield. I just bought a shield with as much life as possible, a bit of AoE, and the right amount of resistance as needed for this build. The amulet could be improved quite a bit. I'm not sure if dot multi is that much better, especially if you could get Owl Surprising, that would be ideal. One of the ring is with vulnerability on hit. Another ring, I tried to get something fancy, but didn't get anything good, just flat fees damage and life and RS. Gloves can have fees damage over time multiplier. You may want attack speed, you may not need more attack speed, you may need intelligence or dexterity or something else, but the main thing is fees damage over time multiplier. On boots, you can get faster bleed boots. These are hunter boots. Oh, I forgot to mention, the helmet enchantment is not mandatory, but it does help quite a bit with the feel of the build. However, Sand Bladestorms move with 75% increased speed sometimes may work against you because it's gonna have less time to stack more bleed stacks, but it is gonna travel faster through more enemies, so just experiment and see what you like. Belt also nothing special, just regen wise. You can use the status coil, which would give you damage, but then resistances could be an issue unless you only check your at maximum power, at maximum endurance charges, which isn't really fair because you don't have maximum all the time. For the flask, I'm actually using automated 2 flasks, sometimes 3 flasks. I am using overflowing Chalice, but I rarely use it. So I sometimes use Amethyst Flask, which automatically gets activated when I get poisoned to remove the poison. But for damage calculation, I was using overflowing Chalice as well because it does give increased damage. Aquamarine to kind of mitigate the freeze and just bleed removal. Now for the supports and skills, Divergent, Bladestorm, I would recommend to get Divergent if you're gonna go with this idea. Because it gives 40% increased damage with ailments. It is linked with chance to bleed, cruelty, brutality, fortify, and melee physical damage support. Then I'm also using Hell of Purity, War Banner, Flesh and Stone linked with Maim, and also have Vengeance with life gain and hit. Vengeance is just a bit of extra, like you want something to be procced when enemies hit you that could give you leech, because if you're not leeching, you have a lot less mitigation. You just need to start leech. Then I got Leap Slam with Enduring Cry linked with Life Tap and faster attacks for Leap Slam. Life Tap with Enduring Cry is nice because you spend life to cast it, but you quickly gain it back. And then I got Blood Rage. I do have cast and damage taken, a high level 15 linked with Frost Bomb, Immortal Call, and increased duration. This actually drains my mana pretty fast, that's why I increased the level quite a bit. And I don't want it to proc too fast. Now for the passive skill tree, I am using this is medium Thread of Hope ring, so I can reach these 2 nodes. These 2 nodes actually give me quite a bit of damage, and I can also reach these, which does give damage and AoE in the different stances. Other than that, the Timeless Jewel goes in here. It changes this one into Strength of Blood, and this is by the way at level 91 right now. You can actually, if you want tiny bit more damage but tiny bit less armor, you can use Cluster Jewel in here. I was thinking maybe I'm gonna be taking Soul of Steel, that's why I traveled through here, but you can travel through here and get these. I did pick the Call to Arms because I am using Enduring Cry on my left click. If you get more points, you may even like travel here to pick up a bit more damage. You may even travel here to pick up these, damage over time multiplier and some life. Or you may want to grab these points to get spell block, more resistances, and glancing blows. If you can get enough damage, that's kind of the trick to balance getting enough damage and tankiness. And the Cluster Jewel is the Devastator. Oh, another trick with the Devastator. So Devastator procs explosions if you kill enemies with hits. It has a 15% chance to explode. However, with the bleed builds, you normally don't, well, hit. You just apply hits and then it bleeds. If you don't want to use Hemophilia Gloves, which actually feel great, but you may need more life and resistances or other attributes, you can actually play it with a Slayer because Slayer has Culling Strike. I took the Culling Strike. When enemies drop below 20% life, when you hit them, they're gonna get the Culling Strike and they're gonna have a chance to proc Explosion from Devastator. For the Pantheon powers, I always forget to mention those. Soul of the Brine King, and for the minor ones, just figure out what you wanna use. If you need, like, I actually don't have much Chaos Res. I don't have any Chaos Res. So I picked this to just mitigate a bit of poison, but if I am poisoned, then I am carrying Amethyst Flask, which automatically triggers when you get poisoned. And yeah, that's about the build. So the next build, I want something faster and something with more damage, but I don't know if it's gonna work well enough. So the idea for the next build is cast on crit with the Storm Rain Inquisitor, because Inquisitor can get ES Reach with the ES Regen with the Eldritch Battery with the Pious Path, so you don't have to worry about the mana sustain. So we'll see how that works. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna make a quick video telling what happened with the build, and if it does work, then great, I will have a decent build hopefully. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.